Being online has now become a huge part of our lives. Everywhere you look, you see people on their phones, at home, at school, at work, in the markets, everywhere. And these devices are not just almost glued in our hands for fun. They are also crucial to people's businesses and livelihoods. So when the Nigerian telecommunications raised their prices, they got this sort of reaction.
The hike is so ridiculous. It's really bad.
Taufik Adesina isn't alone. He's one of hundreds of millions of Nigerians who are online and feeling this extra pinch. And some of the services have seen up to 50% hike, affecting millions of citizens. Just to put it all in perspective for you, the minimum wage in Nigeria has hovered below 50,000 naira, or about $33 a month for years. So today we are asking, how has the data and phone hike in prices affected Nigerians? I'm Alan Kasujja, and this is Africa Daily. Yeah, you heard right. Earlier this year, the Nigerian telecommunication companies announced that they would be hiking their prices up to 50%. To give you a flavor of what this new hike looks like in real terms and money, whereas before Nigerians were being charged 350 naira, which is about 25 cents for a gigabyte of internet data, they would now have to pay 525 naira, or call that 35 US cents. And if you want to call a loved one, be ready to fork out 16.5 naira, or just over 1 cent per minute. So, as you'd imagine, this has caused a big shock across the country, and many Nigerians are properly vexed. Before we get to hear more from Taufik Adesina, let's bring in someone who's been following this story, our reporter in Lagos, Yusuf Akinpelu, who also has a story on how this change has already affected his personal life. First, though, I wanted to get a sense from him about what's been happening and what led to these huge changes.
Telecommunication companies in Nigeria, they had been pushing hard. The reason they gave was basically saying the charges were necessary to ensure that they are still in business. They say because of the need for utilities, things like powering their many power plants, also the cost of their overhead running costs of operating all of their facilities. They said because things are now more expensive in Nigeria, so surely they have to increase the price that they charge for calling and buying data. That was the basic and the simplest of explanation they gave. There are other technical explanation, which the government, by the way, sided with, to say for them to still be in business, they need to increase their price. And that came as a shock to many Nigerians, even though prices of different things they're buying ordinarily has increased, but they just still felt in this digital age where you need to be connected to reach your loved ones and to talk to people, now it's pretty much more expensive. Just to give this a bit of personal feel, I was talking to my wife the other day and she ran out of data. We could not continue to talk. And then she called me back after a couple of minutes to say she was shocked that what she ordinarily would buy for, say, 6,000, now it goes for 9,000. And that 3,000 is more than $2. The shift of her having to make that sacrifice within that short time wasn't something she was planning to do. There was no prior notification or any form of information to tell people that this was coming, even though they knew it might come.
Some people say it just makes sense. If your operational cost goes up, someone has to bear that cost. And if you are to remain in business, you have to remain profitable. And also demand supply. Market forces are at play here.
People who say that wouldn't be wrong. Of course, if the cost of your production is high because the cost of your product too will be high. The fact that the communication of this process, it wasn't exactly done as it ought to be done, at least in my case and many other people around me, there wasn't exactly any circular or memo to say expect this, or maybe do any form of ad to tell people this is what we're bringing on board, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. It was when people know about it, when they were at the point of purchase. Now you now see that what you bought for a dollar yesterday is now like $3 today. You then wonder that what happened between yesterday and today. The fact that you have to pay more for everything now, food, fuel, transport, and the only thing that seemed to remain very constant, data and calling, now it's up also. And for a country like Nigeria that has high internet penetration, high amount of digital banking among Nigerians, there's also an amount of presence online. So the only oxygen they are using to stay afloat in the course of this ecosystem is data. And now that it's more expensive, it would only make the people more impoverished.
Very interesting thoughts, but I wonder what is being done to rectify the situation. I'm told a committee was set up.
Prior to when this announcement was made, Labour Union came out to say they were going to protest, they were going on strike, and except the government intervened. On the eve of the said protest was when they had a meeting with the government, and then a committee was set up to see what they can do to ameliorate the situation. But sometimes, more often than not, the said committees are often just a way of buying time or just dousing the tension, not necessarily addressing the issue. I doubt there would be a reversal in the price because the government isn't so keen to subsidize anything at the moment. And the only way the telecommunications might be willing to return to the former price would be if the government is willing to give some concession, maybe giving some tax rebates or giving some subsidy to people, but the ship has sailed already.
Right. And when was the last time there was such a hike in the cost of data?
If you want to send just one page text message, it would cost you 4 naira. At least in the most recent memory that I've remembered, that has been fixed for more than almost a decade or two. It has never changed. So now it is 6 naira to send text message. Data varied from telecommunication to telecommunication. Some their tariff they vary. While it happened about a year or two ago for some of the telecommunication in terms of data, it wasn't as drastic and noticeable as it is now. The fact that the same amount of data that you would buy for 6,000 naira, you would now pay 9,000 naira. It wasn't so in the past hikes. So this one was significant because of the rate at which, the percentage with which they were increased. So that's why it's been more felt by people.
So if they haven't raised the prices in decades, come on. A small hike now should not be too big a deal. It's been a party for a long time, Now is a good time to increase, and maybe, who knows, they might not raise the rates again for another couple of decades.
Well, if that's the case, then the increase in minimum wage should also come with similar amount of increase. So if you're increasing what people are buying, so too should what you're paying people. And I only talked about the almost like 2 decades for data, text message. The data had like gradual increase in recent times, but not as much as it is now. That's drastic. That does not reflect in what people are earning and what people are buying outside. So that's why it's much of a big deal for people.
Now, to Taufik Adeshina, the voice you heard at the start of this episode, who called the hikes ridiculous, is a photographer and social media influencer, so much of his life and livelihood depend on being connected, on being online. So how have these hikes affected him and his business?
I use high data range and all that, so I normally do a year subscription, and that is 100,000 naira for 1 terabyte. But presently, the current price for that is 150,000 naira for 1 terabyte, and it's not for a year, it's just for 6 months.
So the data you'd have used for a year is now only lasting you 6 months?
Exactly.
That's a significant hike in price.
It is. The hike is so ridiculous and all that, so it's really bad.
So it has affected you because you use a lot of data for your work. Give me a sense of how you use your data. Where does the most of it go?
On a daily basis, I use nothing less than 20 gigabytes in a day. Because I don't sub only on a network provider. I use 4 network providers because most of the time I might actually find myself in a remote area where I don't get network and all that.
Wow, that's a lot of data. And does the hike in price also mean better services, more reliable lines? Just trying to talk to you now, we were having problems connecting.
It's very sad because despite the fact that they increased the data tariff, we have been witnessing a very low network. Like, you sometimes go days without having very strong network to use. Like for me, I tend to pull most of my works in a server where my international clients could actually get to see my works and all that. But then because of these issues, it has really reduced my work output and all that.
Now, you're not the only one. I wonder if there are other people in that creative space, other people who do similar work, people who depend on data for their livelihood. They must also have been very badly impacted.
Yeah, it has really negatively impacted us in the sense that on a daily basis, we depend on these things, and then without data, it just seems like we are off the grind and all that. It's really sad that this is happening. And even if they want to increase it, there should have been a kind of efficiency in their network. Like, you increased the data tariff and still yet the network is getting bad as it was. If you want to send a file of not less than 5 gigabytes, it used to use nothing less than 10 minutes before. But now you can be sitting on it 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and you're still not getting these files sent and all that. Like, it slows down and works and all that.
Taufik says he and his friends are looking for other options and ways to work around these price hikes. And one of the options they're exploring is coming together as a group and buying into Starlink, the company owned by Elon Musk that provides broadband internet, a way of circumventing those high costs should they remain. Do you see people losing business, shutting down shop because it's no longer sustainable? This might not be the last hike, you know?
Exactly. Like the POS agents who mostly depend on mobile data in order to make their daily business runs and all that. Like, I believe this is definitely going to affect their business, and they might actually increase these tariff plans because it just seems like we are seeing the first phase of the increase. But sadly, I'm actually scared for the next couple of months or years when they tend to increase it more and all that.
And Taufik and millions of other Nigerians watch and wait for possible further price hikes. It's a story that's affecting many in Nigeria, be it in a professional or personal way, and a story we'll keep across and keep you updated on Africa Daily. Many thanks to Taufik Adeshina for his candor and Yusuf Akimpelu for explaining this to us. Africa Daily is a BBC World Service production. Today's episode was produced by Victoria Nwahunda and Sharon Himmans. Our editors are Rosanna Lafalce and Simon Peaks. Now, don't forget to check out our sister podcast, Focus on Africa, for a look at 3 major African stories of the day. As always, we'd love to hear from you, whether on this episode or anything else you've heard. africadaily at bbc.co.uk, or get in touch with me on X, my handle at Kasujja, and that's with 2 J's. Thank you for listening.